Have you ever imagined that a simple typing error could completely change the course of your life? Well, sometimes destiny doesn't need to knock on your door. It answers a message. This is the story of Maria Eduarda, a single mother plunged into extreme poverty who, when trying to ask for help, mistakenly sent a message to a mysterious billionaire. And what seemed to be just another difficult day turned into the first chapter of a new life. In the real world, where the bills are due before the paycheck arrives, asking for help is already an emotional battle. Now, imagine asking for it and receiving it. Diapers and milk, of course, but also online employment, a house loan in a luxury condominium, and the rarest of all, empathy. That's where this story touches us, because it talks about opportunity, overcoming obstacles, and a kind of maternal love that moves mountains. This story is not about charity, it is about personal transformation, about how the pain of the past meets the opportunity of the present, and how even billionaires with their cold and calculated routines can be touched by the invisible force that unites two strangers, the truth. So, if you think happy endings are only the stuff of movies, maybe it's time to rethink your concepts. Maria Eduarda, like so many Brazilian mothers, faced the kind of reality that doesn't appear in commercials. Extreme poverty, emotional loneliness, and a baby in her arms. Sophia, still too young to understand the chaos around her, cried with hunger while her exhausted mother tried to hide her despair. That empty kitchen, with a noisy refrigerator and a mattress in the corner, was more than just a setting. It was the stark portrait of a life that was barely holding on. And when you get to that point, even breathing seems like a luxury. No milk, no diapers, no direction. Maria picked up her cell phone with a trembling hand. She had no luxury of pride at that moment, only the urgency of a single mother in despair. She wanted to ask for $200, which for many wouldn't even pay for dinner, but for her, it was the difference between surviving and going broke. She wrote and rewrote the message, sweating cold. It was for a friend. But as if the universe had its own plans, she pressed send, and the number was wrong. This small, seemingly trivial mistake was the trigger for the unexpected. The message that was meant for someone who might be able to help ended up in the hands of someone who could really change everything, a certain Leonardo Vasconcelos. And here begins the part where life, tired of knocking, decides to surprise. But before that, there was still room for more fear, shame, and the doubt that echoed inside her. What did I do? Maria's message, full of pain and urgency, fell into the hands of Leonardo Vasconcelos, a mysterious billionaire, as distant from her world as the stars in the sky. But contrary to what one would expect from someone with millions in his bank account and a shielded heart, he did not ignore it. He responded, briefly, directly asking, "Who are you?" A simple gesture, but one that changed everything. Maria froze. She thought about deleting it, pretending nothing had happened, but her need screamed louder. She responded with a timid apology, thinking that was the end of the conversation. But Leonardo continued. He wanted to know more. He asked for proof, and that's when Maria's inner world collapsed. The shame was hitting her hard, showing her misery, her failures, her bills. Everything was an exposure that hurt the little pride she still had left. Even so, she sent it. The photo of Sophia with a fever, the pharmacy paper, everything that screams truth to those who know how to read pain. On the other side, Leonardo hesitated, but something about that message touched him. Maybe the tone, maybe the lack of drama, or maybe the fact that even in her misery, Maria didn't demand, she just asked. That small slip of the tongue now became an invisible thread connecting two completely opposite realities. And from that moment on, the silent game of destiny began to move the pieces with a purpose that neither of them yet understood. The next day, still stunned by the lack of response, Maria woke up to the sound of the doorbell. A delivery man, wearing an orange t-shirt and looking friendly, was holding two large bags and an envelope. She could hardly believe it. Inside the bags, powdered milk, diapers, medicine, food, everything she hadn't had the courage to ask for. And in the envelope, brand new $50 bills, totaling $1,000. A miracle. For her, it seemed like it. For Leonardo, it was just the beginning. His message was there on her phone, short as always. "Take good care of her. Just live," Maria cried. And it wasn't just relief. It was the weight of months swallowed in silence, of nights of hunger, of not knowing what to say to a daughter who still couldn't speak. That simple gesture turned everything inside her upside down. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel ashamed when opening the refrigerator. For the first time, Sophia breastfed without crying. This kind of help, without demands, is disarming. And that's where the magic begins. It wasn't just about diapers and milk. It was about dignity, about being seen, about someone stopping to listen without judging. And even without knowing him, Maria began to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Trust. Even without understanding why, she knew something much bigger was coming, and that was just the first step. Asking for help has never been easy. And for Maria Eduarda, who was used to holding back her tears and facing the world alone, it was almost unbearable. The shame was eating away at her insides. She had grown up hearing that those who ask humiliate themselves, and now here she was, a single mother, begging for $200 to buy diapers and milk. But there was something different this time, the courage to speak out. Because when hunger strikes and your daughter cries, pride turns to silence. This mix of feelings messed everything up. While she blamed herself for having sent that message by mistake, she also knew deep down that she had no other option. When you look at your own daughter and you don't even have the basics, any risk is worth it. Maria didn't want a handout. She wanted an opportunity. And even without knowing it yet, she was taking the first step towards something much bigger than a momentary donation. This kind of courage, showing oneself to be fragile, is what separates those who repeat the same pain from those who begin to transform it. Maria, with her simplicity and sincerity, was already planting a seed in Leonardo. He, accustomed to flatterers and falsehoods, found in her a woman who did not ask for pity, but for survival. And that, my friend, touches anyone who still has a minimum of humanity in their heart. When Leonardo asked for proof, it wasn't arrogance. It was a reflection of the distrust that surrounded him. Rich people live surrounded by self-interested people, and he, a mysterious billionaire, had seen it all. But what Maria sent were not just images. They were silent accounts of a daily war. The photo of little Sophia, feverish, curled up on a thin mattress, the pharmacy paper with prices that were beyond his budget, all of this spoke more than 1,000 words. There was the raw, naked, painful truth. There was no filter, no posing. She was just a single mother doing her best to keep her daughter alive and healthy, and that broke through Leonardo's calculated coldness. At that moment, he realized, it wasn't a scam. It wasn't an act. It was reality, and the harshest of them all. Empathy, that rare feeling in times of so much indifference, found space even in the heart of a man accustomed to numbers and goals. For those on this side, this story is a warning. How many Marias are there out there, swallowed up by the system, invisible to the eyes of those in power? Sometimes all someone needs is to be taken seriously. Maria had no influence, no contacts. What she did have was real pain, and the courage to expose that pain. And that was what planted in Leonardo the seed of something he had never expected: connection. Maria wasn't expecting anything else. She had already been surprised with diapers, milk, and money. But then the cell phone rang. On the other end, a calm, firm, male voice. It was Leonardo Vasconcelos, a reclusive billionaire, now speaking directly to her. The conversation started out strange, almost formal, but over time, something there began to unravel. Leonardo wanted to know more about her, where she lived, if she had a husband, how she lived, not out of futile curiosity, but trying to understand who this woman was who had touched him without meaning to. It was during this somewhat uncomfortable, somewhat charming dialogue that the proposal came up. He wanted to do a test. He would send a driver an address, and she would have to go with her documents and Sophia. That was it. No details, no promises, just the invitation, almost a secret mission. And Maria, with her heart racing, accepted, not out of naivety, but because she knew that the error in the message was revealing something out of the ordinary, and honestly, she had nothing left to lose. This moment marks a silent turning point in her life, leaving her discomfort zone, because poverty is not comfortable, it is only known, requires a dose of madness and faith. Maria accepted to enter the unknown, and the most beautiful thing about this, it was her instinct that spoke louder. That inner voice that every mother has, that something needs to change for her daughter, and with that simple yes, she opened the door to the improbable. The black car stopped in front of Maria's crooked house. The driver introduced himself politely, helped her with her bags, and opened the car door. During the journey, she watched the world change through the window. Wide streets, luxury condominiums, houses that looked like they were from soap operas. When the automatic gate opened, and she stepped onto that new ground, it was as if she had been teleported. The house was modern, bright, with toys on the floor, and the smell of fresh coffee coming from the kitchen. And surprisingly, it was for her. Denise, the coach, polite, firm, kind, showed the house and the plan. Maria would start remote training. She would work from home, take care of her daughter, and gradually learn tasks such as answering emails, organizing spreadsheets, managing her schedule. Everything digital, everything new. And the most unbelievable thing? She wouldn't have to pay rent. Leonardo offered the property in loan for use for 2 years. It was enough to maintain, care for, and work with dedication. It seemed too good to be true, and for a moment she almost suspected it. But looking at Sophia playing on the carpet and listening to Denise explain every detail, she felt something different. Belonging. It wasn't charity. It was an opportunity. And Maria, with all her experience, knew how to identify when life was offering a real path. She grabbed it with all her might. That house was more than shelter. It was the starting point for a new version of herself. Leonardo Vasconcelos may have been a mysterious billionaire, surrounded by technology and security. But there, in that room with toys scattered around, something began to change. He began to visit Maria frequently. No luxury, no show. He would arrive with a toy in his hand or cheese bread in a bag. He would sit on the floor, build blocks with Sophia, and listen to Maria talk about her day. And the more he came back, the more she realized that cold man was hiding someone who wanted to belong. For Maria, it was all confusing. A single mother who had barely had enough to eat days before now shared coffee with a man who had more money than she could spend in a lifetime. But he wasn't talking about business. He was talking about life. He revealed that he didn't know how much a diaper cost, that he had never been held properly, that he had been raised with maids and spreadsheets. For the first time, Maria saw more than just numbers in him. She saw neediness, maybe even emotional loneliness. These simple and sincere exchanges created invisible bonds. Maria began to wait for his visits. Sophia smiled when he arrived, and Leonardo, even without admitting it, was increasingly present. There were no declarations, no promises, but with each message from him asking, "Did you sleep well?" or each comfortable silence they shared, the connection grew stronger. It was as if two broken realities found a strange kind of fit, and Maria, without wanting to, began to make space within herself, not just in the house. When everything seemed to finally be falling into place, the past decided to knock on the door, literally. Marcio, Maria's ex-partner and Sophia's absent father, showed up at the gate of the luxury condominium. Having been missing for over a year, he reappeared with an interested look in his eyes and a venomous tone of voice. He found out about her new life on social media and came up with that typical speech, "The daughter is mine too." But behind the fake tone, there was something worse, threat and blackmail. Maria froze. Her fear came back with a vengeance. Marcio talked about Leonardo, insinuating that he knew things about him, as if he wanted to ruin everything. He said that the billionaire had dirty secrets and that she would be abandoned. But Maria, even though she was shaking inside, did what had to be done. She called security. She was not going to allow her dirty past to destroy the new future she was building with so much effort. She was firm, courageous, and for the first time, she did not lower her head. When she told Leonardo everything, he was direct. Marcio had a history of attempted extortion. He was being monitored. But he warned her, the real world demands its toll. And soon someone would try to break into that safe space they had created. Marcio's visit was more than an external threat. It was the final test of Maria's internal transformation. She had to choose between fear and trust, and for her daughter, for her new chance, she chose not to back down. After the storm, the silence took on a new weight. Maria, alone in the living room with Sophia sleeping on her lap, kept reliving every detail of the last few weeks. It seemed surreal, from a request for $200 to a life in a luxury condominium, with work, stability, and even company. But what impressed her most was not the scenery, it was herself. The woman who had previously seen herself as just a survivor was now beginning to see value. She was, in fact, in the process of becoming a better person, personal transformation. Leonardo, in turn, was also changing. His days began to have more breaks, fewer meetings, and more conversations with Maria. In his time with Sophia, he discovered a side he had never explored, that of someone who cares, observes, feels. For the first time, he admitted he was tired of numbers. He wanted closeness, something real. And although he didn't say it outright, he saw in Maria's story a chance to reinvent himself too, to rediscover himself, away from the spotlight and closer to his essence. Their story didn't have grandiose promises or soap opera kisses, but it had presence, it had mutual effort, it had empathy, and above all, it had something that few have the courage to offer: opportunity. Maria and Leonardo came from different worlds with different pains, but they both needed the same thing: to start over. And when two people decide to walk in the same direction, even without knowing the destination, the present begins to heal the past. And the future, oh, that is written one step at a time. Maria Eduarda's story makes us stop and reflect. How many opportunities have we missed because we were afraid to ask? And how many times has pride silenced requests that could have changed everything? Her mistake in sending a message became a cry for help heard by an unlikely person, and reminds us that sometimes life just needs a gap to act. What about you? Are you ready to open that gap? Isn't it time to see that transformation begins when we accept help and mainly when we decide to believe, is it possible to start over? You may not know a billionaire, but knowing your own strengths is already a powerful start. Maria's story shows that new beginnings don't have a specific address. They come when we are willing to experience something new. If this story touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, each video is a chance to see the world and yourself from a different perspective, because sometimes all you need to change your life is to click in the right place. And maybe that place is here.